Hello artists, it's Mrs. Treat here with day one of a 2-day activity that we will be doing together. As you can see in front of me, I have got a white piece of paper, some beautiful markers. I do have some water and a paintbrush. We are going to be making a background for our project. Now it is important if you're going to be using markers that they are in fact washable markers. The reason it's important that they are washable is because they act like a watercolor if we add water. Now, if you have watercolors at home, you are welcome to use those as well. So whichever resource you have, you are welcome to use. If you happen to not have either, you can just do a marker background, a crayon background. We're always open to switching whatever medium that you've got, crayons, markers, colored pencils. You can use whatever you've got. Any paper will do. I have just got a traditional drawing paper, nothing fancy here. Our background today is going to be a beautiful set of wildflowers. So what that looks like is just any variety of flowers with different centers and textures, maybe some grass. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with a beautiful large flower. I'm going to make sure my petals are nice and large so I can fill my paper with a nice variety of wildflowers. Got my petals. Now I'm going to use the fat edge of my marker. Some of us have learned this. For my third graders, it might be new. Fat edge of your marker to lay down flat, and you can do large stripes. And it colors in super fast. And we also get really good craftsmanship. Now that is a word that might be new to some of us, but craftsmanship is how neat and clean your work is, whether that means coloring in the lines or when we glue, we don't pour glue out of our bottles and so on. So we want to have good craftsmanship. Coloring this in nice and vibrant. I could change the color if I wanted to. I don't have to stay with all red. As you can see, using that side edge goes quite quickly. Create a nice center on one maybe. Little spiral center there. Maybe a little skinnier. Like a daisy. You can draw your flowers however you'd like. They don't need to look like mine. I'm just making it up as I go. But you could always look up some ideas if you would like. Maybe you've got some inspiration outside. Grandma or mom or somebody, neighbors might have some beautiful flowers for you to be inspired by. Let's go with a nice beautiful purple. Maybe I'll do, I don't know my flowers real well, but I know I've seen something like this before. Notice I'm just making the heads of the flowers. I haven't put in my stems yet. Even some made-up flowers. I've never seen a flower like this, but you know what? I'm the artist. I can make my flower look however I'd like. I want one kind of overlapping. That way it's really a full field of flowers. I think that's kind of pretty. Lots of fun textures on this flower. Might do a nice fun center on this one. I might have some flowers even going off the page. I'll show you what I mean by that. Careful not to draw on your tables. You can place a messy mat or something underneath it to ensure that you don't get paint or marker or whatever on your tables. The washable is nice because it does wipe off, but just out of respect for your area, you might want to lay down a mat. Another made-up flower, kind of looks like a firecracker, doesn't it? Kind of like the look of that one. I might go ahead and do something similar over here. Sort of that explosion look. Just some quick brush strokes. Get some nice textures in there. Slightly shorter ones in between. All right, I might do some down a little bit lower as well. I'm going for realistic flowers. They're more of a doodle flower or a loose interpretation of a flower, but we definitely can tell that they are flowers of some variety anyway. You don't have to watch me do this whole thing. If you get the idea of what is expected of you, you can go ahead and start your project. Pretty self-explanatory. Once we have a nice area full of flowers, my animal that we'll be creating in our next lesson will be kind of covering the center area. So I'm not super worried about this, but I could fill in even more if I felt the need to. Once you're finished with your background, with our flower heads, excuse me, we're gonna come in and we're gonna add some nice long stems to our flowers to give them a little bit more color pop. You can add some leaves as well. Now you can see this one went behind that flower. So I had to lift my marker up. If you want it to go in front of, I could just draw it right over the top like I did here. Maybe we want some just grass to fill in some of those white areas. Using my other marker, my yellow-green here, just to give a nice range of value or color. We're definitely using the elements of art in this with line, shape, color, and with some of my strokes, I'm even getting some texture here with our grass. Notice I'm going different directions with my marker, and I'm doing some really quick strokes to make it feel very grass-like. I could do some really large ones if I wanted to, and so on. All right, once you've got your background filled with a nice variety of flowers, I'm gonna come and get some water, just in an old container, it's nothing fancy, with my paintbrush, and hopefully this marker will have an illusion, a little bit of watercolor once I get it wet. Now notice as I sweep my brush, I don't have a ton of water on it. It bleeds out a little bit, just to sort of haze those edges a little. It makes it a little more interesting for the eye. And again, if you just used watercolors in this, you'd probably be done with this step. Make sure you rinse your brush in between because you will have your color in your brush. It's always nice to have a paper towel of some sort just to test to make sure that it's clean, because you don't want your colors to mix. They'll get muddy. I might do my yellows here since on my brush has got some yellow in it. Now, of course, my yellow is mixing a little bit with those blue sweeps, aren't it? And what happens then? We're going to get some green, which is fine. I like a little bit of mix. It makes it a little more interesting. You just don't want it to get too crazy because it will get muddy. Just making those a little bit larger to fill in those white areas. Got a little green in my brush, so I'm going to sweep that out. Just makes the background a little more interesting. Check my brush, make sure it's clean. Go ahead and do my purple. Ooh, that's beautiful. You might find that your paper warps a little bit because it's not watercolor paper, and that's fine. We are not worried about that at all. You can use whatever kind of paper you have available to you. Even if it's notebook paper, it might warp quite a bit, but once it's dry, you can maybe place it a little bit underneath something, a book of some sort, and find that it'll help flatten it out. But I'm not worried one bit if I start to get a little warping or bubbling in my paper. It's just fine. Two separate steps with this because I don't want my colors to mix too much up here, so I'm going to rinse in between. I don't mind if purple and blue touch because they're neighbors on the color wheel. So if they do mix, they are friends. They will make a beautiful blue-violet. All right, last but not least, I'm going to do a little bit with my stems just to blur those out a little bit to start soften the edge a little. Just so it sort of resembles the flowers as well. You can use that same kind of brushy technique. All right, one last thing. I want to get this center a little bit softer. There we go. All right, once you are complete with your background, you need to set it somewhere to dry. We'll be coming back to this once it is dry to complete our project. Can't wait to see what you guys have accomplished. See you soon.